Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 5, Episode 49 of Pro Wrestling's Top 50. I'm your host, Travis McNeil, and today we continue our countdown of the top 50 matches in NXT history with match number 2 on our list, which is the 30-minute Iron Man match for the NXT Women's Championship between the champion Bayley and the challenger Sasha Banks from the NXT TakeOver Respect event held on October the 7th of 2015. This is, simply put, the best Iron Man match ever wrestled, in my opinion. I've discussed a couple Iron Man matches, throughout these series that I've done. And I've talked a lot about how the Iron Man match, I think, is a pretty difficult match to put together. Because there's an expectation, there's already a predetermined set runtime for the match. And, often in these matches, it really only gets dramatic during, the closing bit, right? The final fall of the match. So what you have is this crowd that can't buy, necessarily near falls throughout the match because although they happen, right? It's an Iron Man match, it doesn't directly result in the finish. So a lot of times you get, a relatively dead crowd up until the last little bit of the match. And, knowing that time that the audience has to sit there for, that can kind of weigh on them a little bit. And you think of something like the Bret and Shawn Michaels Iron Man match from WrestleMania 12, which is a very polarizing match. Some love it, some hate it, but it, it can be a bit of a tough match to get through. And I don't think there's any questions that the crowd, isn't super into that match. I've talked a lot about how I feel that a 30-minute Iron Man match can often produce better results than a 60-minute Iron Man match. When we think about 30-minute Iron Man matches, we probably go to Ricky Steamboat and Rick Rude from Beach Blast 92. If you're a newer fan, maybe you think of AJ Styles and Christopher Daniels from Against All Odds, 2005. But really, I feel like this match just does everything perfect with the format. And this match is it's absolutely amazing because they take what, up until this point was the best NXT match ever, which was their match at Brooklyn where Sasha Banks lost the title to Bayley. And they take all of the aspects of that match and they play off them here, and they do such a phenomenal job with that story that anybody who had any fingerprints on this match really deserves a lot of credit for just how amazingly the whole package came off. And this is a match too that when it happened at the time, I remember thinking it was really good. I thought it was, great. I highly enjoyed it, but I thought it couldn't live up to what the Brooklyn match was, in having that strong emotional win come from Bayley. Watching both of those matches back now, there's no question to me that this match is even better than the Brooklyn one. It blew me away. I watch, for this project, I watched the matches in chronological order. I watched everything NXT, right? I watched every TakeOver. I watched every match from television that was, worth a lick. I watched some house show matches and stuff like that were on YouTube as well. So I watched everything in order. And when I saw this one, and I continued to watch, I really thought there was no way that anything was going to beat this out. I was pretty, dead set in my opinion that this would be the greatest NXT match of all time. And unfortunately, one came in that, was slightly better, but you're going to have to wait for that one. What I love about this match, though, is, I criticize WWE a lot, if you pay attention to these videos that I post. One thing that I often, give WWE flack for is how they present, things as being historic, especially when it comes to the women, because I almost feel in a way it's patronizing, and it kind of takes away from what I think, wrestling should be, which is these grudges and these feuds and, people wanting someone to win and wanting someone to lose. And I don't think there's anything wrong with, a face versus face match, a pure athletic competition. There's a lot of cool creative things you can do with that, where one of them, slightly kind of rides that fine line between face and heel. So I think, those matches certainly have their place. But for this match, how it came about is, WWE, they called up, Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks and Charlotte to the main roster, started the women's revolution, or, whatever title they wanted to give it. And naturally Sasha dropped the NXT belt to Bayley in Brooklyn. So they brought Sasha back for this match. Sasha Banks was on the main roster. There was no doubt in anyone's mind that Bayley was going to win this match. It made no sense for Sasha Banks to win this match. So what they did is they presented it as this 30-minute Iron Man match. To be historic, they called the show Respect. And basically what the deal is these two women, they're great rivals, great friends. They love each other. They're going to bring out the best of each other in this competitive match to determine who is the best. Very much Brett and Shawn WrestleMania 12 style. And for me, what made the Brooklyn match so great was that face-heel dynamic, and I was worried you were going to lose that here with how they presented this match. And, it starts off and the crowd's chanting, women's wrestling, and, they're talking all about making history, and then the crowd chants, you deserve it, which I thought was, it was the first women's TakeOver main event, so I guess that's what the chant was for, and, obviously, these women deserve this spot, but again, it was just this, kind of hokey, put everything on a pedestal, rather than look at the match that these two women want to tear each other apart to win the title. What they did here, though, was so great because we got, some of the best heel work, in my opinion, of this decade, past 10 years from Sasha Banks in this match. And they do such a good job where I feel like they really incorporate that kind of forced, historic narrative into the story of their match. So we get, an opening collar and elbow lock and, tie up, and it's a stalemate. And, Sasha goes for all of these quick pins. She tries to pin off a shoulder block and all of these roll-ups. And it's the flip side of what happened in Brooklyn, where Sasha was, confident, overly confident, we'll say, arrogant, talking trash. It was Bayley that really tried to put that pressure on at the start and get those falls because the title was so important to her. So here we get, Sasha Banks realizing the competitive aspect that she needs to try to, really go for a quick fall, especially with it being an Iron Woman match. So we get this sequence from Sasha. Bayley follows it up and hits the exact same sequence herself, kind of doing this tit for tat, like, we're all friends here, we're all athletic, we could do this great standoff and everything like that. And we get Sasha throws a drop kick and Bayley lands in the corner. And this is the first glimpse of this match being truly something special because, they had the great camera angle. I used it for the thumbnail in the Brooklyn video, where Sasha kind of towers over Bayley in the corner and just talks that trash, and Bayley does that big up kick. So they're put in the exact same position as they were in Brooklyn. And this time, no trash talk or attack or anything from Sasha. She simply lets Bayley get up, right? TakeOver, respect. The respect is there. It's this clean, historic match. The pace quickens a little bit. Sasha Banks takes a gnarly bump on her head from a Japanese arm drag. Sasha Banks gets her kind of like lucha, escalera arm drag that she does. And just so many little things, these little nuanced things that they put in this match, as a play off of Brooklyn that, some of them are obvious, like the corner spot, but things like this, this arm drag from Sasha in Brooklyn, when she went up the rope, she was pushed off by Bayley and she fell to the floor, and that kind of allowed the match to reset a little bit. So here she's a lot slower going up on the escalera, but she does it this time facing Bayley, whereas in Brooklyn, she had her back to her, got pushed to the floor, couldn't see it coming. Here, very deliberate, facing Bayley, so she knows if Bayley's going to attack her, that she could see it coming and blocking. Just little things that, because I watched these matches so close together, I was really able to absorb, and it just added to what I feel, was this brilliant match. Sasha goes for a backstabber and Bayley avoids that, and she almost gets the belly to Bayley, but Sasha, bails to the corner. And now we get this awesome role reversal spot where it's Sasha in the corner, Bayley standing over her. And this is where this, this switch flips just a little bit in Sasha Banks, where she, she has this big ego that she's put in check for, the historic nature of this match. But when she's in that corner and she sees Bayley hovered over her, that ego comes into play. She feels embarrassed. And at this point, all bets are off. She knows she needs to destroy Bayley and be, the boss that she claims to be. And Bayley is so great here as just, the the Sting, late 80s, early 90s babyface falling for the heels crap every single time. And, she helps Sasha out of the corner and they do a handshake and she gives her a big hug. And what does Sasha do? She just whips her down by the hair head first into the mat and, and tries to get the cover. Just that hint of that dirty play there. So Bayley, kind of fires up at this point with her hot baby faces, offense, and she hits, this sliding drop kick she kind of does through the corner post. She does, a couple of those in a row. And back in the ring, Sasha's so flustered. She's kind of, reeling from these drop kicks that she goes for a schoolboy and she throws her feet on the ropes, right? Again, that toting that heel face line, and the referee notices it, and stops the pin. But in all of this commotion where, the ref is admonishing Sasha, Bayley comes in and Sasha rakes the eyes of Bayley and gets the schoolboy, and it puts her up 1-0 at about 8.5 minutes into the match. And at this point, Sasha Banks is, firmly cemented her in-match heel turn. That she's the boss, she's dirty, she's going to do whatever it takes to win because, Bayley insulted her, whether it was intentional or not. Bayley thought she was being the bigger athlete, pulling her out of the corner and giving her a hug and whatnot. But, Sasha felt slighted by that. So, Bayley now has the perfect, babyface comeback that she has to make, where she's down to fall. This is where she excels. This is where Sasha is so good, despite being a smaller frame wrestler, like fighting on top and being that dominating, dirty heel. And Bayley's really aggressive with her offense. There's a point where she goes for the finish that they did in Brooklyn, where Sasha's in the corner and she kind of pulls her up by the feet and tries to grab the belly to Bayley. But as she pulls her up, Sasha just blasts her with a forearm, right? That callback to Brooklyn. She has it scouted. But then Sasha goes up top and ends up getting pulled off the top into the belly to Bayley. And it's enough to tie it up 1-1 a couple of minutes later, about 11 minutes or so into the match. So what I really like about this is, as they're going tit for tat with the falls here, Bayley is getting all of these clean, statement victory falls over Sasha, and all of Sasha's falls are going to come through, nefarious or kind of cheap tactics. And it's so good because, Sasha doesn't lose anything, in the big picture because, she had an even match with Bayley. But Bayley, never drops a clean fall, which is something you got to be careful of in Ironman matches and any elimination matches or anything like that. You often see a criticism where there's so many more falls than there would be in a normal match, and it kind of makes wrestlers look weak. Submissions kind of make sense that you'll give up an early fall, but why would you get pinned by a move 5 minutes in that under normal circumstances in a match you would kick out of, right? So they do a really good job at playing that within the stipulation of the match, and again, just making Bayley look strong, that she's getting these proper falls over Sasha and not losing anything because it's the cheap tactics that is putting her behind the 8-ball. Bayley goes, tries to keep the momentum and goes for that post drop kick again, but this time Sasha has it scouted. She catches her, she swings her into the ring steps, does it repeatedly. And it just kind of starts to show frustration. She rolls Bayley in, she's trying for these 3 counts, and Bayley keeps kicking out. So she keeps throwing her to the floor, and then takes her up the ramp and tosses her into the LED screen that they have at the entrance, which is displaying the clock, right? So again, great little kind of visual impact where the clock, goes all scattered on the LED board again, showing that it's the time that's going to hurt Bayley, right? Because she's going to be behind on that score, and it leads to a count out. So again, Sasha gets the fall. Bayley doesn't really lose anything by count out. If it was a normal match, she wouldn't even lose the title. But this is where this match picks up huge, because Sasha Banks just goes to another level with, being just a dirtbag heel. So you have, Izzy, the fan, that idolized Bayley. I believe she's now training to be a wrestler or something. But she's at ringside and, she's a very young girl and she's dressed like Bayley, and she's this great fan that's watching her idol. And Sasha Banks, just starts yelling at her and takes her, Bayley headband and makes the poor girl cry. And it's one of those things that, I kind of have mixed feelings on this stuff with wrestling, because in one sense you don't want to traumatize a child and play with their emotions, but in another sense, as a viewer, it makes somebody so unlikable. And I wonder, this young girl is now getting into wrestling, and I, wonder if she's at peace with that right now, and she considers it this cool moment of her childhood. So I don't know, it could go both ways. But for the story of the match, though, it's great, and it makes Sasha so unlikable. And she's mocking Bayley, and she transports back to how she was in that Brooklyn match. They end up going back to the corner spot again, and this time it's so great where Bayley goes for that up kick like she did in Brooklyn, but Sasha catches the leg and turns it into a backbreaker. And she grabs a Boston Crab and just, stomps at the head of Bayley. And she's so ruthless and so great. And Sasha Banks is an amazing performer. But this is maybe the best she's ever been in this match, of just making everything work. Bayley, ends up countering the Boston Crab and gets a small package to tie it up 2-2 about 18 minutes in. And our final 10 minutes of this match are just over the top great. So Bayley teases the reverse Rana from the top, the Brooklyn spot. Sasha fights out, catches her in a tree of woe and hits like a double knees out of that. And just, does like the Bayley, whoa, like the tube guy kind of taunt, just being a complete dirtbag. Bayley starts rolling with offense, and she doesn't do that taunt, right? So that juxtaposition of, Bayley's taking this serious and wouldn't do the taunt she normally does. Sasha does it just to be a dick. Like it's all really working. And we get this moment where Sasha, charges into the corner for double knees and ends up hitting the post. And Bayley, all of her emotions have built up to this point, someone that she respected, right? TakeOver respect again, turned her back on her, insulted her biggest fan and made her cry, has taken every shortcut possible. So Bayley gets, hyper emotional, hyper aggressive, and she goes to Sasha Banks's hand, the same way Sasha did in Brooklyn, and she grabs her hand and starts, slamming it on the ring steps and stomping it into the ground and all of this great stuff. She hits a running clothesline off the ring steps at ringside. We get, a quick little reset where, Sasha kicks Bayley back into the steps to still kind of keep control. But then she goes for a tope, and Bayley catches her into the dive with the belly to Bayley on the floor, which was awesome. And I talked about this a little bit in the Gargano and Cole 2 out of 3 falls match, where Bayley probably could have got the count out with that move and went up a fall. But again, it's this historic match. She's a babyface. She wants to win clean. She rolls Sasha into the ring, and it's only good for 2. Very shortly after that, she gets like a Kurt Angle style, like run up the ropes, belly to Bayley off the second rope. And Sasha just gets her foot over the ropes for like the high drama last 10 minutes of this match. They're firing on all cylinders. The crowd is so hot with these near falls. We're 2-2, so it's basically reset like a normal match. Bayley ends up getting the reverse Rana, but Sasha Banks like flips out of it and mostly lands on her feet, which was really cool, like something out of like the Kota Ibushi or Ricochet playbook. Again, just showing, what worked in Brooklyn isn't going to work here. And Sasha ends up hitting her own belly to Bayley for a really great near fall for 2. And she ends up getting the Banks statement. And there's about 2 minutes left in this match. And this is where the drama kicks into overgear. Sasha's got the Banks statement, her submission, but the hand, right? So the same hand that, was Bayley's weakness in Brooklyn is now Sasha's weakness. She can't, hold the hold, and Bayley's so great, slamming the hand and attacking the hand to escape Sasha's submission finisher. Sasha ends up getting a backcracker. But before she could transition, back into the Banks statement, Bayley kind of rolls her into one of her own. But she wrenches back on that hand, and she's just, pulling at the fingers and everything. And then she starts hitting the head stomps that Sasha did earlier in the Boston Crab. And it's enough for Sasha Banks to tap out with seconds left in the match. And again, it made logical sense. if it's an Iron Man match, you know, and time is running out, you expect the babyface to hold on to the end. You know, Sasha's a heel. We didn't want to see her hold on to the end. So we got the great satisfaction for tapping out. It made logical sense that she couldn't hang on just those couple extra seconds because the hand was so damaged. You add the head kick. She's got her, you know, main roster career to preserve. You know, it made great logical sense that she tapped out. Incredible finish to an incredible match. You know, we get the big tear-filled post-match where the locker room empties and they, you know, Triple H brings out flowers to both competitors and they're all emotional, they're all crying, and that's fine, you know, when all is said and done, that they literally give the, you know, the women their flowers, you know, for their great match that they put on and everything that these two meant in elevating the women's division to, you know, where it is now in the WWE, although it has kind of faltered in the past couple of years, but you know, the two matches that these two had, specifically that Brooklyn one, you know, was the shot in the arm that the women's division, you know, really needed to finally get presented as something serious that, you know, fans can invest in just as much as they can in the men. So, you know, both of those women deserve so much credit for that. But they deserve so much credit for this match. It is an incredible piece of wrestling. Everything about it is excellent. The drama, the moves, the story, it's all just incredible. You can watch this match, of course, on Peacock. If you're outside the US, it's on the WWE Network. WWE also has it for free on their YouTube account, which is super cool, so no excuse not to watch it if you've never seen it. You can subscribe to my channel here on YouTube so that you never miss a video. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Wrestling50, and please join me again tomorrow as we continue to count down Pro Wrestling's Top 50.